Hey guys, it's Chris Truitt from The Reluctant Somm. We're really excited about Season 3. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Just wanted to give another little note that if you like what we're doing and you want to show us some support, reviews, likes, shares, word of mouth, all of these things really help us. We'll also be creating a newsletter this year that focuses on some of our favorite restaurants, favorite wine lists, favorite places to eat, as well as just some really cool people in the industry, as well as some other insights into what's going on in our field of profession. I also wanted to let you know that on that is where we'll be updating everybody on all of our pop-ups and any collaboration events or anything that we're doing. So if you want to keep track of us, that's the best way. Also, if you're not already following us on Instagram, you can follow us at Reluctant Somm on Instagram and keep up with us. Give us likes. Cheers. Cheers, Celtin.
Cheers.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. It's going to be a better experience than when I usually see you. I wave at you over a pass or see you in passing or I see you at an event, and that's usually my, minute and a half interaction with you. So this is going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to congratulate you. It was at the end of last week. I can't even keep track of what day it is. You guys got the Michelin acknowledgement.
Yeah. I think it was Wednesday of this week that it's all blurring together. This previous week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's, I feel like makes sense, with what you guys are doing and what the quality of food that you're putting out. It makes a lot of sense to me. So I'd love for us to kind of elaborate on that, the path, and kind of maybe, not that there's a blueprint necessarily, but kind of the things that you set in place that kind of helped get you guys to that spot, and maybe, any tweaks and tweezes that need to happen to get to the next step. But, as you know, we start the podcast off and I'd love to hear about your story, where you're from, kind of your upbringing and how you got to where you are today. So.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in Sacramento, California. I started cooking at a small little Italian bistro there. I actually started as a dishwasher in Fair Oaks. And one day, one of the line cooks called out sick. It's kind of that classic story where I was always, peering around the corner when I wasn't busy, watching all the salad pickups and things like that, how they build the dishes. And the chef said, "Hey, you want a shot? I'm going to throw you in." And the rest is kind of history. I went to culinary school, Denver and Charlotte, worked at some really nice restaurants in both of those places. And then I moved back to the Bay Area afterwards. I did a short little time at Morimoto in the sushi department, actually, weirdly enough. So learning, Japanese butchery techniques and how to make rice properly and like things that I still use to this day. Through that, I got an opportunity to stage at Cuisine in Oakland, and I got the job opportunity. It was a funny story. I was actually reminded from the CDC at the time that I did not get the message that we were supposed to prep in black t-shirts, and then afterwards we were going to be changing into our chef coats. I brought a white t-shirt because I assumed, okay, that would look the best under the chef coat. I showed up. He said, "Hey, do you have a black shirt?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I can't let you into my kitchen unless you have it." So I ran down to the Walgreens that was at the corner. I was asking the lady working, "Do you have any black t-shirts?" She showed me to the section. They only had women's V-necks. So I said, "You know what? I want this opportunity." I bought the largest women's V-neck that I could find, and I went back in there proudly with my little deep V and my tight sleeves. And he was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this. Let's do it. It's good, right?" And he's like, "Okay, let's go." Yeah. And then he told me the other day, he's like, "I gave you the job because you did that."
Well, that's awesome.
Because you showed that kind of like willingness to put in what it takes. Yeah. And so I spent 3 years at Cuisine under James Siabu, and Keone Koke was the CDC there at the time. He was the chef that was the CDC when they went from 1 star to 2 stars. I learned an immense amount from that guy, and from James. Still remain mentors to me to this day. After that, I moved down to Mexico, to Tulum. One of the alumni of Cuisine was opening a project there. So I spent a year as the CDC, kind of helping him open, working on recipes. That was a pretty cool thing. That was like a zero waste concept. We had a garden in the back. We had water filtration on the rooftop through this ancient Mayan technique. We composted. We made biochar from lemon peels and pineapple peels that the bar would use. You name it, we were trying it out. So that was really cool. And then the pandemic hit, and I moved back. And then through that opportunity, a few little odd jobs here and there, but ended up working at Niku Steakhouse under Dustin. And then they gave me the opportunity to open Prelude, and that's where I am here today.
And it's been now, has it been almost a year?
Prelude, yeah, coming up on, I think, 7 months or something like that.
Oh, okay.
We opened in August of 2024.
August.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've been working on the project previously to that, and then we did, industry nights and soft opening events. But open to the public August 29th, 2024.
Yeah. And it's been a wild ride since, probably.
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So lots of material here for us. I think one of the things that you mentioned, obviously, that would be worth highlighting is the women's V-neck t-shirt, right? and getting the job. And I think, I think there's something to be said. And I think that your chef that gave you the position was onto something, because, you didn't say like, okay, I'll come back tomorrow, or, oh, let me go to the store, I'll be back in like an hour or something. You had a sense of urgency, and you wanted to right the ship, and you went and did what you needed to do to make that happen. And I think that is a trait that, most people probably wouldn't have.
Yeah, I figured that tomorrow wouldn't happen. If I said I'll be back tomorrow, there were, someone else was going to be in line. At that time, Comey, and it still is to this day, but Comey was a very sought after position. It's also a very small team. The kitchen team was like 4 or 5 people. So when an opening comes up, it doesn't happen often, and you jump on it and you take it, and you hope that they choose you. So
yeah, that's amazing. That's tenacity, I guess. It's like, and also the self-realization to not walk in and assume that the position will be here for me tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you had mentioned also Verdant, if I'm saying the name correctly. That's the Tulum
Verdant
location. Verdant, as a zero waste concept, I love this idea. Are they still around? Are they still open?
Unfortunately not. It was a casualty of COVID. Also, because we were growing a lot of our own vegetables on our garden out back, and with a sister farm that was about an hour away. The hurricane season in that time as well was brutal, and it kept wiping out the crops over and over again. And so they just weren't able to really recover in time to kind of open back up.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, I love that concept. And I mean, I think, one of the reasons that I like to speak on another Michelin concept, Quince, has this kind of a similar full use. I mean, a lot of people have a full use, not necessarily zero waste, but a full use philosophy. And they have the other concepts that they can kind of like filter. We take the prime cuts for Quince, take the next stuff, we send it to Catonia, and then we take the rest, turn it into sausage, and put it at Verjus or whatever,
Right.
Which I've always thought was really great. And I think it's a beautiful way to also like honor the ingredients, And then Comey. So Comey, was it tied to something else, or did you just kind of like go out on a limb and?
I heard about it through someone I was working with at Morimoto at the time, and he said, I heard about this restaurant, and I was like, yeah, I heard about it too. It's really cool. And he said, I think I can get you a stage there if you'd like to work there, because I'm leaving Morimoto for a different opportunity. I think he went to either Cren or Saison. I can't remember which happened first. And he said, I know that I can get you a stage. I don't know if they're going to give you the job, but at least we'll go from there. And I was like, yeah, sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself at Niku Steakhouse. And online I was reading, it says you found yourself back with Chef Falcone. Is he at Morimoto when you started?
He was just coming from the French Laundry, I believe, at that point. We worked together for just a little bit of time. He was on his way out. We kind of had a different opinion about what Morimoto was going to be, or we had a different thought about what it was going to be going into it. It unfortunately didn't quite live up to those standards that I think that Morimoto used to hold. And so we kind of saw through that really quickly, and we decided, our time's going to be short here. But I did connect with Chef Dustin immediately, through some funny jokes and comments in the back, and kind of this like talking about, our big egos about like, yeah, we're better than this. Like, we're going to go and do something else. We're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then, funny enough, a couple years later, after I'd run Comey and moved back from Mexico, he he put on Instagram that he needed a CDC, and I reached out, and yeah.
That's awesome. That's wild. And your time at Niku was, I'm sure, fun, fulfilling. I mean, it feels like it's a big restaurant because it feels like it's so important that everybody knows it. And it's, considered by many to be some of the best steak in California, maybe the country.
Yeah.
How is that on kind of a day-to-day basis? I mean, it was every time I talk to the team over there, it's always busy. I mean, was it just kind of like...
busy. It is always busy. I mean, when I first started, I thought it was always busy. And then by the time it ended and we were doing even more business, I was like, oh no, this is what always busy means. I mean, 7 days a week and there's not a slow day almost never. I mean, there's busy days and busier days.
Right. Yeah.
But it's just wild. The reception, it's like a steakhouse, but we do things a little bit differently. Like Chef Dustin and I always thought about it from a tasting menu standpoint, but just kind of increasing the portion size, but thinking about that same level of like seasonality, sourcing, technique driven food that is decidedly not steakhouse food. And then just getting the best quality steaks we can get our hands on. And those steaks, you just like, what I always tell guests is just like, don't mess it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's already there.
Yeah.
Salt, pepper, wood fire grill.
Yeah.
That's it.
Simple. One, I feel like having the butcher shop next door is kind of an ingenious move as well, because you have a separate outlet for kind of the beef that you're purchasing, which maybe makes it easier to meet.
Yeah.
I don't know, is there an order minimum you have to meet, or is like one side of Wagyu enough?
Well, there's definitely like leveraging that happens there where we're able to get relationships with purveyors, or they're able to send us things that they don't send to anybody else. And that's because a lot of times everyone wants the prime cuts, the ribeyes, the New Yorks, the fillets. Nobody wants to take the offcuts, the less popular things. We have the fortunate ability in the butcher shop to be like, okay, I'm going to take these side cuts, these things that nobody wants, and then the primo stuff goes to Niku. But definitely there's that relationship there.
That's awesome. Yeah, the smash burgers at the butcher shop
they're insane.
Incredible.
They're
It's
insane.
so good.
Yeah.
One of my favorite work with days, I was with Julien Barreau from Chateauneuf du Pape, and we were popping around and we saw Molly at Quince, and then at Saison, I'm sorry. We saw Molly at Saison, and we're like, I don't know, we don't really have a lot of time. We can't sit down for lunch. She's like, where are you going next? And we said, oh, we're going to Niku. And she goes, oh, you just get the smash burger from next door. And I was like, what smash burger? So it's me and Julien, this French winemaker, sitting on the little wood bench outside, just crushing a smash burger between appointments. It was
It's perfect.
very heartwarming. It felt very humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Prelude is very much kind of a concept that's based around your history. Obviously, it's in partnership with the Omakase Group and obviously the J Hotel. But what was it like being given, not the keys to the Ferrari, but being given kind of the opportunity to put your stamp on something? I mean, was it really easy to think really big, and did you have to pull yourself back, or did you kind of approach it in a more measured fashion? Or, I don't know, maybe walk us through that kind of initial evolution of the idea.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, like, there was whispers of us taking over the F&B at the J Hotel, and kind of, what that looked like was very unclear. There was a concept in place before I took on the project that was going to be a California seafood restaurant. And to be honest, I was not excited about it. I was like, they were talking to me about wanting to be the chef there, and I was like, I'll do this first tasting for you about something that I think that you might want for the concept, but my heart's not in it. I'm not excited to be like, if I'm being honest with myself. I think that there's plenty of California seafood restaurants, and I'm not sure we needed another one at the time. And so, I did the first tasting. It went okay, not really great. They didn't really love it, and I was like, all right, well, like, I have an idea for food that I want to do, and I'm passionate about it. I feel good about it. Why don't we try that? And so we did a tasting for Cash, and Dustin and some of the other, higher ups in the group, and that one they loved. That one they loved.
The one that your heart was in.
The one that my heart was in.
Yeah.
Right. And so, sat down and discussed things with Cash, our CEO, the founder, and it's funny because he has no framework for this. He doesn't understand Southern food, or like what it is. He doesn't. His purview is obviously Asian focused cuisine. But the best part about that is it didn't matter to him that he didn't personally care about it or understand it. He was like, you care about it, and I know that you're gonna make it good. And so if you believe in it, I'll believe in it with you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, that's really the dream. That's all you could really ask for.
Right.
Is somebody to have faith in your vision.
Right.
You know?
And, you know, Omakase Restaurant Group is one of those groups that you hear about that they're always saying, you know, we want to foster talent from within, and we want to give people a platform. And I think that you hear that a lot from different companies that are medium to large, but it's not put into practice a lot. But this was a perfect example of like, hey, we're putting our money where our mouth is. Like, we're literally giving you a multi-million-dollar concept to run, and it's your idea. It didn't come from us.
Right.
So that was really cool and humbling, and I feel super fortunate and grateful to be given that opportunity. I feel like it's pretty rare to be given that sort of opportunity.
And especially in the climate that we're in now, right? In just like kind of the status of the restaurant and hospitality industry in San Francisco, you know, there's a lot of places that, you know, are tightening their belts a lot. And so it's amazing that they were willing to take the position. I think, you know, being in a hotel is helpful, obviously, as well. But yeah, it's cool. It's very exciting. I was really excited. You know, I spent 10 years in Texas. And so when I had the chance to dine there, a lot of the flavors kind of brought me back to that, a little bit more flair. And I'm with you. If it would have just been another California seafood restaurant or another, you know, California French cuisine thing, I would have been like, okay, cool, right. You know, but it's something that I think is really unique. And we touched earlier on Manresa, which in my brain was one of the only kind of more Southern leaning menus that I could think of in the recent past. But where do you try to draw inspiration from, and where did you pull a lot from? I mean, your upbringing, as I've read, you know, you had some Southern family members, but was it like a raw memory that you took and you elevated, or is there cookbooks that you found, or like kind of, I don't know, where'd the brainstorming happen?
Sure. It's like, so I think like number one, when you know, think about concepting a restaurant, there's San Francisco always gets love and hate for being like one of the best food cities, and people say, oh, it's not what it used to be, but then we just, you know, I just read articles where it's like actually people are saying that it still is, and I agree, but there's plenty of options for the average diner to go out and eat, and so you have to be different, or you have to have a point of view. And so when I was thinking about my point of view, it was the memories I had around my grandma's cooking growing up. Gathered around that table, that was the meeting point for the entire family, was her house. She would cook grits almost every meal, and like things like skillet corn and huge biscuits and fried chicken dinners on Sundays, and the list goes on. But so drawing from that was really important to me, but it's not all like direct translations of those restaurants, or excuse me, of that cooking, nor is it like trying to imitate Southern food in other places. I think it's like taking nostalgia, taking memories, and also realizing where we are in California and kind of translating that into something that is like has a sense of place here, but draws from places that aren't here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I think that's well said too, is, you know, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of what a lot of, you know, other concepts first did when they started to do the same thing, you know, how to not, I was going to say exploit, but how to take advantage of, you know, the wonderful bounty of ingredients that we have in California, and how to kind of utilize those to translate this different identity or this different approach to the cuisine that you're serving, which I think is amazing.
Thanks. I mean, I think it's pretty cool too. We're trying. That's for sure.
No, I mean, I can't stop thinking about the pimento with the trout roe.
Yeah.
And is it, somebody told me it's trout skin. Is it salmon skin, or is it
salmon skin?
Salmon skin. I was right. Okay.
Yeah.
That dish is just absolutely outstanding. And that's what you guys served at the Ferry Building when we did the Quesa event over there. Yeah.
And a lot of, I thought, I'm proud of that dish, but I didn't think it was going to have such a positive reaction. But people loved that at the thing, and they told me that like that was their favorite thing they ate from all of the stands, and came back to see us just because they remember the pimento cheese. And so it's a nice feeling when things like that happen, especially when it's kind of unexpected.
And then I felt like the soup course kind of had a little bit more of that Central Mexico tasting cuisine kind of inspiration to it, right? It had like the rocks, and it had the very flashy, like bright orange colors. I mean, was there anything that you channeled from other restaurants that you worked at that again, without necessarily trying to replicate or take from someone else, was there like anything that you thought maybe didn't necessarily quite fit the Southern concept, but that you still wanted to kind of influence in the program?
I like the whole like interplay between like highbrow and lowbrow, or trying to make like, well, me and Dustin call it like trashy food fancy. We have this personal kind of battle where we try to think of how to integrate ranch into all of our menus that we think about. And I do the same thing at Prelude. I'm like, where's the next ranch placement on the menu? So things like that are super fun. The soup thing, honestly, that was a decision by my sous chef on how to plate it, Nick. And it's almost ironic at this point, like the whole like just give us plates thing that fine dining restaurants do. Like they'll put things on antlers and branches and different things, and ice sculptures and dry ice, whatever the case may be, right? But I think in this case it made sense because it was the roasted shells from the soup that we were actually serving. And so you could, and people did, scoop out the rest of the flesh and eat it with their soup course.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, my sous chef's wife had it, and she's like, that was my favorite part of it because I got to scoop it out at the end and like have some more squash that was super delicious. So like, I think that to answer your question in a roundabout way, we definitely do draw inspiration from like different restaurants that maybe we worked at before or that we see, and try to take things from there, but kind of reimagine it through our purview. Yeah.
I love the highbrow lowbrow comment is funny. The Texas toast and like the Old Bay spice seasonings and stuff like that. I like that too because while it is like you mentioned, lowbrow versus highbrow, it's also that sense of nostalgia, right? Because anybody that's been to the east or to the south knows those kind of flavors and has seen those things before, and when they're from there, it has a lot of nostalgia. Texas toast is a big one for me. I mean, I remember there was a place I worked that had Texas toast, mashed potatoes, and meatloaf, and an onion ring tower on top of it. That was like a lunch dish, right?
A light lunch.
A light lunch, yeah. And the Texas toast ever since then was the big deal. I mean, the owner was very like hung up on the fact that we had to communicate that it was Texas toast. It wasn't an open faced sandwich. It was an open faced Texas toast sandwich.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Branding is important.
Branding's important. I guess it must be. I don't know that I'm all the way there, but I guess it is. And how's it? I mean, I feel like Prelude feels pretty small, and Niku feels pretty small, and you mentioned Comey is kind of small. Do you like the energy of working kind of slightly smaller kitchens where it's a little bit tighter knit and something like that? I do. Actually, Prelude is kind of one of the larger dining rooms that I've ran as far as being the chef. So in that sense, it was kind of a challenge. I do enjoy the tight knit community of the 5-day restaurant where your entire team is there every single day. It gives us the opportunity, like just as recently as 2 weeks ago, we did some wine tasting that Jade Hufford set up for us as a team, and we were able to go out there and kind of spend a Monday afternoon relaxing, but also learning some things about like wine that we're serving in the restaurant. And I think it's super, super important to build that community and the trust of the entire team. When they have the buy-in from you, whoever the case may be, the person that they're working next to for 12 hours a day, it means that so much more for the end product that we're serving people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The camaraderie, I think, and that's a good point, is it's that 5-day restaurant, and I feel like that's something that maybe didn't only come from, the pandemic, but the pandemic, I think, made a lot more 5-day restaurants, and in a way good, right? Because there's less staffing. So you don't have to worry about covering 2 different teams, daytime, nighttime, weekend kind of team. But also in a way it does, I think, build a lot more community. It's not like, oh yeah, I work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That guy works Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I never see him. He never sees me. We don't even know each other.
Right.
You guys all know each other. It becomes very much like a family, and I'm sure you guys probably do stuff on your days off and hang out, get in trouble, go to ball games.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like, I think that people say it all the time, and it almost becomes a cliche that like you see your restaurant family more than your real family, but it's definitely true.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do something and commit your time to it, something that you love, you might as well have some faith and enjoy the people that you work around, and getting to know them on a personal level as well as on a professional level is like one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah. The wine side of things, right? Because I'll try to tie it to the podcast at least a little bit. This is obviously a hospitality podcast, but when you've worked at other places, have you worked quite as closely with the wine team, or do you feel like that's more because of where we are now and where you are now?
Definitely is because of where I am now. Before I've always, even at Commis, we talk about pairings and stuff with the sommeliers, but as far as like shaping what actually goes onto the list as much as I can, I don't know things about wine, but I have preferences and I know what I like and I don't like. And so like people like Morgan Harris and Evan Hufford, who can translate that into something that makes sense professionally in the wine world with the immense knowledge that both of them have, is super cool. And we talk about, they're nerdy about it, and I love that because it gets me excited about it. But the opportunity to work with a master som every day and the guy who's actually designing the list is very, very cool.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And you mentioned the road trip to the winery. I think that's really cool. I think that's really important. One of the things that I always appreciated about Quince was that on my second day of training, I was in the kitchen prepping food for 10 hours. You know what I mean? That was my front of house training. And I think it taught me a lot of respect and appreciation for all the hard work that goes into the dishes and each of those ingredients on the plate. And so I'd love to see more crossover. I like to see that you guys got to go to the winery together. It wasn't just like a front of house trip. It was like the whole team. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And even as it relates to like cocktail program and spirits on the list, I'm always talking with Franco. Currently right now, I've given him a challenge. I'm like, hey, I know that not a lot of people are drinking whiskey right now. Everyone's drinking tequila, but I want more rare domestic brown spirits on the list because it's makes sense with what we do. Yeah. So that's something that we're working on right now, tasting all the time.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's something that we see a lot. On the sales side, I constantly go to a place and it's like a wine bar, and then they have just like whatever beer, grocery store brand beer. And then you go to a beer bar and they have, all these amazing craft local beers, and then they have like grocery store wine, and sure. It's nice to see kind of a complete picture from the beverage side of things, the food side of things, and a little bit more kind of identity. Not that there's a lot of wine in the South, but you could have a lot of wines that are inspired by it.
Right. And I think that from that, we also take inspiration from the name Prelude itself, meaning like Prelude as it relates to what's to come next. So trying to highlight up and coming producers or like best examples of new producers that are out there, really cool champagnes and champagne houses. I think that you've seen on the list probably. So things like that are really fun. And then trying to bring, like I said, the highbrow, lowbrow also into the beverage side. So I've been talking with Morgan. I'm trying to convince him, and I think we're going to do it. We're going to try to serve some high life on the pairing.
Yeah.
The awesome. Champagne of beer.
Yeah. That's funny.
So figuring out some way to do that would be really fun. I did a pop-up back when I was at Commis with one of my best friends who I worked there with. And we did a course that was called like the industry course. And it was like meant to be all these leftovers that you might have from family meal that are kind of like hodgepodge thrown together, warmed up. We served it in a deli container.
Yeah.
And we poured Miller High Life.
That's so
as
funny.
the pairing.
That's so funny.
It was fun.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've thought at the small wine bar that we consult on. I always thought like I should just have a bottle of Fernet in the back of the fridge.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of the menu, it'll just say like, family meal. And they'll be like, what's that? And just like, shot of Fernet. Here you go.
I love it.
When I had the fortunate opportunity to eat at California's, I remember they served a beer course with their tacos. And I was like, that's great. I thought that it's good. It doesn't feel too stuffy. It, again, feels like something that people can relate to. And, it's really easy. I always think about things on the scope of like my parents and what they could have experienced and what they could have like understood and also appreciated. And so much of, I think what's done at the high level can be really intimidating to people.
Right.
So having the ability to have that kind of play off highbrow and lowbrow, I think is really important in, you're not just serving the 0.01% every night,
Yeah.
You're serving normal folk that save up all year to dine here and have that incredible meal, So having it be fun and playful and relaxing, I think too, is really important.
I think those times where you do feed the people who are saving up all year, those are the most important experiences to give to people, right? Because they're choosing us when they can choose a lot of different people for their one special night, and like so the lengths that you go to make them feel comfortable is super important. So I think that anything you can do to kind of bring them into your world. So chefs, we don't eat like we cook all the time.
Yeah.
And Psalms don't drink like they sell all the time, right? We drink Miller High Lifes after work. I think that it's fun to kind of, break that fourth wall just a little bit with the guest, have a little bit of fun and say, like we're humans too. Yeah. We're people. Yeah. We like trashy things just like anybody else.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think it's sweet. I like when I go to a place and it's like you buy the kitchen around, as like an option on the menu. I'm always like, yeah, you're right. Like they need one. I mean, obviously they don't need them all, especially not during service, but the
if that happens 12 times a night, it's probably not good.
But one of the dishes that I really wanted to highlight because I thought it was really special was I was with my now employer and we were having dinner. And he's very much a foodie and has a culinary background. Went to culinary school in France and, was a somm in New York and is now running this awesome wine importing business and cooks at home a lot and eats a lot and dines at all these crazy restaurants in New York all the time. And, it was one of those things where like when I go out to eat, I always like take a picture of every course, and I'm like, got to take a picture. But I was with this guy. And so I was like, I don't want to look too cheesy, you know what I mean? And I felt great when the snapper course came out. He was like, okay, I'm going to take a picture. And I was like, yeah, you are. With the snapper dish is really, I'd love for you to just, obviously we can't describe it to people that haven't had it yet, but I mean, can you just remind me again how you kind of got it to have the shape and the filling inside of it and everything? Could you just go? Yeah,
it's just a fillet of fish that we kind of butterfly in half and then we fill it with a Cajun shrimp mousse. Then we, portion them in kind of 6-ounce pieces and then roll it in a plastic wrap. It's an old French technique called torchonning. And it's funny because I'm very much against that most of the time. I like things to look natural. I like them to look as they were. Just a piece of fish is fine for me. And that's kind of the ethos I learned at Comey. It was very like natural as it lies, not overly fussed about. But it's something that me and Dustin Falcon differ on. So when I was at Niku, he was always angry. He's like, you just want everything all natural. And I want everything to look, prim and proper and put together like that French Laundry kind of mentality. And so when he saw that dish, he was like, I can't believe you're rolling fish like that.
That's so funny.
I can't believe it. The whole time at Niku, you didn't want to do it. And now you want to do it? Yeah. But it makes sense because of like old school fine dining in New Orleans and things like that have a lot of that old French influence.
Commander's Palace.
That'd be something you'd see at Commander's Palace.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I think it's kind of fun to harken back to those things in fun ways when you can, where it makes sense.
So let's maybe take a stab at, let's say, the concept, the structure, you've now got the nod from Michelin. You know, that means that in the coming year, you'll be reviewed for a star, likely, probably get it. Fingers crossed.
Don't say that.
Yeah. But, you know, is there a blueprint that you followed? I mean, I feel like kind of the diving in with both feet is constantly the like, oh, we do tasting menu only. But you guys approached it pretty slowly as far as the tasting menu side of things went. You know, you had a la carte and then you introduced both. Is that kind of always going to be the path forward? You'll offer both options because you're in a hotel, and that also, I think, maybe appeals to the highbrow, lowbrow thing. Or at some point, are you considering moving away from the a la carte? This is so many questions, so I apologize. And then I guess kind of, you know, what do you think you need to do to kind of get to that next step, or your intention to maybe just continue to do what you're doing because you're doing it well?
Sure, and thank you for that. So blueprint wise, I think that I never said out loud to any of my team except for my sous chef that we had Michelin level aspirations. We wanted to be doing our best at all times and being authentic and providing really, you know, warm, genuine hospitality, delicious cocktails, interesting wines, and hopefully tasty food. And whatever end comes from that, what I told them is great, but whatever doesn't is also great, and we're just going to keep trying to do our best. So that's kind of the ethos that I have. Now, when it comes out in public, now we have to say, okay, well, we got the nod, like,
Sure,
this is a goal of ours that we're going to be pushing forward. So come along for the ride with us.
Yeah.
You know, and the team, I think they really latched onto that and taken it and are reinvigorated by it. For sure.
I think that's great. It's a recognition of the hard work that you've put in versus like, okay, it's one notch in the path of where we're trying to get to.
Right.
Right.
But so to answer the other parts, being in a hotel, I think definitely we need to have the option for folks to come in and have a very casual experience if they'd like to, or to have the more formal tasting menu side. Also, I think philosophically I really enjoy to be able to go into a restaurant that might have a Michelin star or a very lengthy tasting menu, but also go in and just get a couple drinks and snacks. And to be accessible like that, I think is really important because we're not trying to be overly fussy and overly formal and overly kind of like tasting menu-y formulaically. We're trying to be a little bit different and like I said, have a slightly different point of view about what fine dining is. And let people know, make them feel comfortable, and like you can still have fun. You can still come in and have fun. Have a Miller High Life on the pairing, or have a piece of Texas toast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So things like that I think are really important for us.
Do you think? No, I guess this isn't a question. I'm sorry, I was still halfway through it. I feel like that's something that we're seeing a lot more now. You know, you obviously Bar Cren is tied to Atelier Cren, and you know Bar Cren is right next door, shares the same kitchen for the most part. And so, you know, knowing that there's like a slightly more casual, kind of easy, I still wouldn't say it's necessarily every day, but you know, more accessible version of a similar quality. You know, Saison is offering an abbreviated menu at their bar. You know, Quince obviously has Catonia. Saison has Angler, kind of other concepts like that. I feel like that's something that we see a lot more now, which I guess Quince had their salon. They were offering like an abbreviated menu in their salon, but I really like that. And that's one of the things that, again, when I think back to what my mom and my dad would have been able to do, and, you know, they would never have been able to go full dinner, you know, full pairing, full sups at Quince. It just never would have been in the cards for them. You know what I mean? Right. And so the whole idea that they can come in and just relax and have a great time is important, because my dad loved great food, you know? So it would be robbery for him to never be able to taste something because you just couldn't afford to walk in and sit at the table. Sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point to bring up. I like the accessibility for everybody, right? Like, I think that most people should be able to afford high quality ingredients and to be able to enjoy really, really good, you know, techniques and hospitality from professionals, especially people in our own industry. You know, we've had a number of cooks that are able to come in and just sit at the bar and have a couple snacks. You know, maybe they probably can't afford the whole tasting menu, whatever the case may be, right? But they're able to come in and have the same quality of food, just in a little bit different format. Yeah.
I think that's a good point too, is kind of the industry side of things is, again, I think if you don't go out to eat, you're not going out and having these experiences, it makes it maybe harder to come in with that energy every day and that kind of vision and that enrichment, maybe I would say, of going out to eat and going out and experiencing these other things. And that's one of the things I always thought was important. People in the industry work really hard and they work really long hours, and so when they go in, they might not have the, $185,000 income or the $250,000 income or the corporate expense accounts, but knowing that they can go in and also get like a little bit of something special, they can get, treated a little bit special from the staff. And it's this kind of acknowledgement of this, of like, yeah, we both work hard. And it's like this mutual understanding, which I think is one of the beautiful things about our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my cooks said it the other day. It's kind of one of the few luxuries that we get as restaurant workers, as cooks, is that when you go into another place, that the open arms that you feel, the welcome that you get, and the kind of the ICU treatment. Like you just worked 80 hours. Maybe you only have one day off. You chose us for an evening, and thank you for that. And let's show you a good time.
Yeah. Here's a Miller High Life.
Here's a Miller High.
I wanted to also just kind of reference back, I guess, to Morimoto and to the sushi side of things and kind of the techniques that you're still using now. Is there? I feel like the sushi approach would be invaluable because so many restaurants have kind of like the crudo courses now. Is that where you kind of find most of those techniques falling into, or do you find kind of like is there smoking or searing, or kind of like where do you find yourself kind of tapping into the Morimoto skill set the most, or the sushi skill set the most?
Staff meal rice.
Yeah. Awesome. The most important thing, people think that it's the wine budget or the beverage program or the food program that keeps the restaurant going. It's not. It's staff meal.
It's
staff meal is what keeps people going.
Yeah. So I can make pretty good rice. I'll say that about myself.
Yeah.
For a white guy. So no, but you take little techniques wherever you can find them. But I definitely think that the Japanese fish butchery is super, super important to know. Even curing techniques and now more modern dry aging techniques with fish.
Right.
Ikejime, curing, drying, all that stuff is important no matter what cuisine you're doing. And it's a good skill to learn. And I thought that at the time, Morimoto was kind of like the best place that I could learn to do it. Yeah. That's
great. I mean, it's important, I think, that we always take, I always think of it as we always take parts of where we've worked with us, and it kind of makes up the mosaic of what we are. And most of the time, I feel like the thing I learn is the thing that I don't like or the thing that I don't want to do, But there's been plenty of opportunities that I've had that I've learned amazing things from and grew a lot from. So that was one of the things that I was like, how does it kind of fold into everything else,
I would say like not overtly or obviously most of the time, but there are the opportunities where like if I need to show a young cook how to break down a fish, it definitely helps. And for things like you said, like crudo courses that you might be doing, or even just background techniques of like how to cure a fish properly based on the species of fish or the fat content or whatever the case may be, is really valuable, even if it's not going to be Asian influenced at the end of the day, or on the plate, I should say. Yeah.
But I think also too, it's like you mentioned, the techniques are so important, and kind of the final product. It's one of my working concepts. I think about the San Francisco wine market, and I think about, obviously we highlight domestic producers because they're in our backyard and it's important for us to highlight them. But I feel like French wine sales have kind of disappeared a little bit more too. There's restaurants probably like Niku that are obviously still crushing Bordeaux's, and there's Champagne has not gone anywhere, and Sancerre's doing just fine.
Right.
But like Rhone and like some other regions, it feels like it's kind of not necessarily been relegated to the other red category of a wine program, but it's kind of maybe fallen off the trend a little bit more. And now so many restaurants are carrying like sake. And my only thought to this is that like, I think it has a lot to do with the evolution of technique that's come along in the culinary world for restaurants. Is, you know, there used to be a lot of French cookery and a lot of technique, and that probably dominated the majority of the education. And now we see a little bit more kind of broadening out into those, you know, Eastern Asian kind of techniques. So.
Yeah. But I was very against sake being on the list when we first, before we first opened.
Yeah.
For a couple reasons. For one, because this was like a departure from the Japanese and the Asian kind of influence restaurants. Sure. The omakase restaurant group was a part in.
I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
I didn't want to
strike a difference there.
Right. And like, you know, myself coming from Niku, I didn't want to have the perception of like, oh, he's just doing like Niku stuff, but in a different location or whatever the case may be. But Evan, the owner of Maison Healdsburg, when he was consulting and doing the opening list for us, he's kind of been able to change my opinion about it. Be like, sake doesn't have to go with Japanese or Asian food. We've tried it with some of my dishes and I've really liked them. So I think when it makes sense, nothing's off the table, but I don't believe in doing things just for the sake of it or just because they're trendy or popular.
Yeah. Or like we were talking about earlier, kind of like a blueprint of like, this is what I have to do to hit this mark. Right. You know what I mean?
I need 7 sakes because people are going to buy these things.
Yeah.
And, at some point you have to be a little bit formulaic and follow what people are going to be consuming.
Sure.
But as long as you have an opinion and a point of view, and I think I have a point of view. I definitely think Morgan Harris has a point of view or two.
Or two.
But I think that we're a group of young but talented professionals that have opinions about things, and that works to our advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you're able to get more gas in the tank because of that, right? Because of that buy-in that you were talking about earlier, because of the passion. You're able to really kind of like tap into that last 10%, you know? You're not leaving anything in the tank, kind of.
Right.
What, let's see, what else? What else? Is there something else you want to talk about?
Not necessarily.
I feel like we've checked a lot of boxes. I have one more question for you. Well, 2 more questions, I guess. One of the questions, well, let's talk about the wine first. We'll do that. Okay. Do you enjoy the wine?
Yeah, it's nice.
I wanted something, you know, I got kind of panicky. I had a busy day and I told Bianca, I was like, I don't have my wine cold. It's like, just pour red. It's like, I know this room's always a little bit warm. And also I think whites make good kind of casual conversation. So,
sure.
So yeah, I wanted to pour something for you that was fun, interesting, but also kind of like maybe a play on what you're familiar with. So it's chocolate from a different region within the Basque. So instead of having that like frizzante, like slightly bubbly kind of character to it, this is like oily and richer and still has that like, you know, bone chilling acidity that runs through the whole thing.
Definitely does.
But yeah, Bodega K5 is one of the wineries I started representing recently, and I've been really impressed with their wines. I mean, they're on the 23 vintage. This is the 21, and I'm just like, this is super cool, and it has a long life ahead of it. So.
Yeah. Well, it's super fun right now to drink. To be sure.
Yeah. It's a good conversation wine. It keeps you lively. Every time I feel tired, I take a sip, and I'm like, whoo.
The acidity brings you back.
I said the other day I was tasting with somebody, and we had this Gruner Veltliner, and it was coming from Austria, and it was called Bursting, was the vineyard. And I said, it's bursting with flavor. And then somebody was like, it's like the smelling salts of wine. You know, it was like a long day, I'm tired, and you take it and you're like, wow, whoa, like, yeah, I'm awake. I wanted to go all the way back to the beginning of your career, and I wanted to ask about the Italian restaurant that you used to work at.
Yeah.
Still there?
I haven't checked recently, but I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
What's it? Do you want to share the name?
It is or was, I guess we could go look it up, called Fabian's Italian Bistro.
Okay.
And the owner's dad was Fabian, the Italian American singer in the 50s or 60s.
Wow.
I believe.
Yeah.
And so they named it after him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I'm planning on going up to Sacramento soon, so I'll go. I'll drop your name. I'll remember that dishwasher that you had? I know him. You know what he does now? No. And do you still find yourself going out there more, or is that where your folks are?
My mom and brother and sister and a couple of my aunts and cousins still live in Sacramento.
Yeah.
My grandma moved back to Alabama, and grandma and grandpa a couple years ago. They live in Gulf Shores now.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad moved to Florida a few years ago too. So
Cool.
a little bit spread out, but I do
Yeah.
find myself in Sacramento quite often and
That's awesome.
hanging out.
Any trips coming up? Any inspirational trips you want to have planned that you're going to go kind of tour the Gulf Coast maybe, or do something like that? Or
Franco and I still want to go down to New Orleans and kind of check it out.
yeah.
But we do have maybe someone from New Orleans, top 50 bar, coming to us to be determined.
Ooh, TBD.
So that could be some fun little surprise coming up soon.
Little crossover.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's exciting. Yeah, I have my one New Orleans plug I'll always give is Stein's Deli in the Garden District. Awesome sandwiches. Dan is as dry can be, but he's a nice guy, and the beer selection is one of the best beer selections I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Have you heard of Turkey and Wolf out there?
no.
So perfect example of like really nice technique, but trashy stuff.
Yeah,
They put potato chips on a fried bologna and American cheese sandwich.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
They have a double-decker collard green melt.
That's awesome.
Yeah, highly recommend if
Yeah.
you're ever in the area.
Yeah, I was thinking poutine, but that's even more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bologna sandwich with chips is classic. Now only if you can eat it by the poolside, right?
Right.
That's the
Right.
move. Awesome. Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. Thanks for putting up with my rapid fire interview. I apologize for the pace at which I set, but yeah. Any final words? Any words of wisdom? Any final thoughts that you want to leave any of the listeners with?
Come join us at Prelude.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Cheers, Celtin. Thank you.
Cheers.